It was a quiet Tuesday morning when the sun peeked through the clouds, casting a soft golden glow over the small town of Cedar Ridge. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of freshly baked bread from the local bakery. The streets were still waking up, with only a few early risers shuffling along the sidewalks. Among them was a man named Ronan Hayes, the owner of a modest diner called the Rustic Spoon. But today, Ronan wasn't his usual self. Today, he was undercover. Ronan had always been a hands-on kind of guy. He believed in staying connected to his customers, to the heartbeat of his business. But lately, something felt off. The diner, once bustling with laughter and chatter, had grown quieter. The regulars still came, but the spark seemed to have faded. Ronan couldn't put his finger on it, but he knew he had to figure out. So he decided to do something he'd never done before. He disguised himself as a customer to see things from the other side. Dressed in a simple plaid shirt, jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes, Ronan walked into his own diner. He chose a corner booth, one that gave him a clear view of the entire place. The wait staff didn't recognize him, and for the first time in years, Ronan felt invisible. He ordered a cup of coffee and sat back, observing. The diner was cozy, with its warm wooden walls and checkered floors. The smell of sizzling bacon and pancakes filled the air, but Ronan noticed the silence. The few customers who were there ate quietly, their heads down, lost in their own worlds. It was a far cry from the lively atmosphere he remembered. Ronan's heart sank. What had happened to his beloved diner? As he sipped his coffee, his attention was drawn to an elderly couple sitting a few booths away. They were holding hands, their faces etched with lines of time and wisdom. The man, with his silver hair neatly combed and a gentle smile, was leaning in to listen to his partner. The woman, her eyes bright despite her age, was speaking softly, her voice carrying a mix of sadness and hope. Ronan couldn't help but eavesdrop. There was something about them that pulled him in, something that made him forget why he was there in the first place. "You know, Henry," the woman began, her voice trembling slightly, "I've been thinking a lot about how much time we spent together. 53 years, can you believe it?" Henry nodded, his eyes glistening. 53 years of laughter, tears, and everything in between. "Margaret, I wouldn't trade a single moment." Margaret smiled, but there was a sadness in her eyes. I worry, Henry, about what's next, about leaving this place behind. It's been our little haven for so long. Where will we go? What will we do?" Henry squeezed her hand gently. "We'll figure out, my love. We always do. But no matter where we end up, as long as we're together, we'll be okay." Ronan felt a lump form in his throat. He couldn't explain why, but their words struck a chord deep within him. He watched as Margaret wiped a tear from her cheek, her hands trembling. Henry reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn-out photograph. He handed it to Margaret, who held it like it was the most precious thing in the world. "Remember this?" Henry asked, his voice soft. "Our first date, right here in this diner. You were so nervous. You spilled your milkshake all over the table." Margaret laughed, the sound like music. "And you were so sweet about it. You didn't even flinch. Just helped me clean it up and ordered another one." Henry chuckled. "I knew right then and there that you were the one for me. This diner, it's where our story began. It's where we've shared so many memories. I don't want to lose that." Ronan's heart ached as he listened. He realized that this diner wasn't just a place to eat for people like Henry and Margaret. It was a part of their lives, a place where memories were made, where stories were written. And yet, he had let it become just another restaurant, a place where people came to fill their stomachs but left their hearts behind. As the couple finished their meal and slowly made their way out, Ronan sat in silence, his mind racing. He thought about his own life, about the dreams he had when he first opened the Rustic Spoon. He had wanted to create a place where people felt at home, where they could come together and share not just food, but moments. But somewhere along the way, he had lost sight of that. That night, Ronan couldn't sleep. The conversation he had overheard played over and over in his mind. He thought about Henry and Margaret, about the love and history they shared. He thought about the other customers, the ones who came in alone, their faces heavy with the weight of the world. He thought about his diner, about the empty chairs and the silence that had taken over. By the time the sun rose the next morning, Ronan had made up his mind. He was going to change things. He was going to bring the rustic spoon back to life. The first thing he did was call a meeting with his staff. He told them about his experience, about what he had seen and heard. He spoke from the heart, his voice filled with emotion. "This diner isn't just a business," he said. "It's a place where people come to feel something. And we've lost that, but we can get it back. We have to." The staff listened, their eyes wide with surprise and understanding. They had noticed a change, too, but they hadn't known what to do about it. Now, with Ronan's words ringing in their ears, they felt a renewed sense of purpose. Over the next few weeks, Ronan and his team worked tirelessly to transform the rustic spoon. They rearranged the seating to create a more welcoming atmosphere, added soft lighting, and even started playing gentle music in the background. Ronan introduced a new menu, one that featured comfort foods with a twist, dishes that reminded people of home. But the biggest change was in the way they treated their customers. Ronan encouraged his staff to engage with the patrons, to ask them about their day, to listen to their stories. He wanted the diner to be a place where people felt seen, heard, and valued. The response was immediate. Slowly but surely, the diner began to fill up again. The laughter returned, the chatter grew louder, and the atmosphere became warm and inviting. People started staying longer, not just to eat, but to connect. One day, as Ronan was wiping down the counter, he saw Henry and Margaret walk in. His heart leaped with joy. He watched as they made their way to their usual booth, their hands still clasped together. Ronan couldn't resist. He walked over to their table, a smile on his face. "Welcome back," he said, his voice warm. "It's good to see you both." Henry looked up, his eyes twinkling. "Thank you, young man. It's good to be back. This place, it feels different. Like it used to." Margaret nodded, her smile radiant. "It feels like home again." Ronan felt a surge of emotion. He had done it. He had brought the rustic spoon back to life. But more than that, he had reminded himself of why he had started it in the first place. As the days turned into weeks, Ronan continued to pour his heart into the diner. He made it a point to talk to every customer, to listen to their stories, to make them feel special. And in doing so, he found a new sense of fulfillment, a deeper connection to the people who walked through his doors. One evening, as the sun set and the diner was bathed in a warm, golden light, Ronan stood at the window, watching the world go by. He thought about Henry and Margaret, about the love and history they had shared. He thought about the other customers, the ones who had become like family, and he realized that the rustic spoon wasn't just a diner. It was a place where lives intersected, where stories were written, where memories were made. Ronan smiled to himself. He had set out to change the diner, but in the end, it had changed him. It had reminded him of the power of connection, of the importance of listening, of the beauty of shared moments. And as he turned back to the diner, to the laughter and chatter that filled the air, Ronan knew that he had found his purpose. He had created a place where people could come together, where they could feel at home, and that he realized was the greatest gift of all. The moral of the story? Sometimes, the most meaningful changes come from listening to the hearts of others. In a world that often feels disconnected, it's the simple act of caring, of truly seeing and hearing one another, that can make all the difference. And in doing so, we not only transform the lives of those around us, but we also find our own path to fulfillment.